The moment their eyes met across her tiny bakery, Sarah's world stopped spinning. The man standing before her, disheveled, exhausted, with a small child clutching his hand, was unmistakable despite his worn clothes and unshaven face. Those same hazel eyes that had once looked at her with such tenderness 17 years ago now widened in shock. How could the homeless-looking single father she'd just hired to wash dishes for $2 an hour be the same person whose company was worth billions? And why did he collapse to his knees when she whispered his name? If you're touched by this story of fate, second chances, and the unexpected ways our past returns to us, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories that remind us how connected we truly are. Sarah Miller wiped her flour-covered hands on her apron and surveyed her small bakery with pride. 5 years of savings, countless sleepless nights, and an unwavering determination had transformed Sweet Beginnings from a dream into reality. The morning rush had just ended, leaving behind the comforting aroma of fresh bread and cinnamon that had become her signature scent. The bell above the door jingled, and Sarah looked up, ready with her practiced smile. It faltered when she saw who entered. A man in his late 30s stood hesitantly at the threshold, his clothes clean but visibly worn. Beside him, a little girl of about 6 clung to his hand, her eyes wide as she took in the display of colorful pastries. "Good morning," Sarah called out. "Welcome to Sweet Beginnings." The man approached the counter slowly. Up close, Sarah could see the dark circles under his eyes and the way his shoulders hunched forward, as if carrying an invisible weight. "I saw your help wanted sign," he said, his voice low and slightly hoarse. "I was wondering if the position is still available." Sarah glanced at the small handwritten sign in the window. She'd been looking for part-time help for weeks, but the pay she could offer was minimal. "It is," she replied. "But I should warn you, it's just dishwashing and cleaning up. And I can only afford to pay $2 an hour, plus whatever baked goods you'd like to take home." She expected him to turn around and leave. Instead, relief washed over his face. "That would be perfect," he said. "I'm Daniel, and this is my daughter, Emma." The little girl offered a shy wave, and Sarah's heart melted. There was something hauntingly familiar about Daniel's face, but she couldn't place it. "I'm Sarah. When can you start?" "Right now, if that's okay. Emma has her books and coloring supplies." He gestured to the small backpack the child carried. Within an hour, Daniel had rolled up his sleeves and tackled the mountain of dishes with surprising efficiency. Emma sat at a corner table, carefully coloring while occasionally stealing glances at the pastry display. Sarah brought the child a chocolate chip cookie and a glass of milk. "On the house," she whispered with a wink. Emma's face lit up. "Thank you, Miss Sarah. Daddy and I haven't had cookies in forever." Something in the child's innocent statement tugged at Sarah's heart. As the day progressed, she found herself watching Daniel. There was a quiet dignity in the way he worked, a methodical precision that seemed at odds with his circumstances. Occasionally, he would pause to check on Emma or answer her questions, his face transforming with love when he looked at his daughter. By closing time, the kitchen gleamed. Daniel had done more than she'd expected, reorganizing shelves and fixing a leaky faucet she'd been meaning to address for months. "You've been a tremendous help," Sarah said, handing him a small paper bag. "I put in some bread and pastries for you and Emma." Daniel's eyes glistened with unexpected emotion. "Thank you. This means more than you know." As they prepared to leave, Sarah made a spontaneous decision. "Daniel, would you be interested in coming back tomorrow? Same rate, but I could use the help regularly." The relief on his face was answer enough. Days turned into weeks. Daniel arrived each morning with Emma in tow, never late, never complaining about the meager pay. Sarah learned they were living in a shelter after losing their apartment. Daniel had been laid off from his job in tech when the company downsized, and without family to help, they'd quickly spiraled into homelessness. Emma's mother left when she was a baby, he explained one quiet afternoon as they worked side by side. It's just been the two of us ever since. Sarah found herself sharing her own story, how she'd left her small hometown with dreams of becoming a pastry chef, how she'd worked multiple jobs to put herself through culinary school, how this bakery represented every sacrifice she'd made. What she didn't share was the heartbreak she'd left behind. The boy she'd loved in college who disappeared from her life without explanation, leaving nothing but memories and a broken promise to return. One rainy Tuesday, Daniel arrived looking more exhausted than usual. Emma's eyes were red-rimmed, and she clung to her father with unusual intensity. "The shelter is closing for renovations," he explained quietly. "We have 3 days to find somewhere else." Sarah didn't hesitate. "I have a spare room above the bakery. It's nothing fancy, but you're welcome to stay there until you find something permanent." Daniel started to protest, but a clap of thunder made Emma jump, and Sarah saw his resistance crumble. That evening, as she showed them to the small but clean room above her shop, Sarah noticed a faded scar on Daniel's forearm as he reached for Emma's backpack. The sight of it triggered something in her memory: a summer day by a lake, a clumsy fall from a dock, a boy with a freshly bandaged arm promising it didn't hurt. She stared at Daniel's profile, suddenly seeing past the beard and the weariness. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Daniel Reynolds?" He turned, confusion clouding his features before recognition dawned. The color drained from his face as he sank slowly to his knees, one hand reaching out as if to steady himself against the impossible. "Sarah? Sarah Bennett?" His voice broke on her name. "Is it really you?" Emma looked between them, bewildered by her father's reaction. "Daddy? Do you know Miss Sarah?" Daniel couldn't speak. Tears streamed down his face as he nodded, still kneeling on the floor. Sarah's mind raced through fragments of memories: the brilliant computer science student she'd fallen in love with during her first year of culinary school, the ambitious dreams they'd shared, the promise of a future together before he'd vanished without explanation. "I don't understand," she managed. You left. Without a word. And now you're here, like this?" Daniel wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I never meant to leave you," he said, his voice raw. "My father died suddenly. I had to go home to take care of my mother and younger siblings. I tried to call, to write, but—" "I never received anything," Sarah interrupted, her own tears threatening to fall. "Your roommate," Daniel said. "She told me you'd moved on, that you were seeing someone else and didn't want to hear from me. She promised to give you my letters, but when I never heard back, I thought—" Sarah closed her eyes, understanding washing over her. Her roommate Vanessa had always been jealous of her relationship with Daniel, had always made comments about how he was too good for her. The thought that Vanessa had deliberately kept them apart was almost too painful to bear. "I waited for you," Sarah whispered. 4 months. Emma tugged at her father's sleeve. "Daddy, why are you crying?" Daniel pulled his daughter into a hug. "Because sometimes, Emma Bean, life surprises you in the most wonderful ways." He looked up at Sarah. "After my mother stabilized, I threw myself into my work. I developed a software program that took off beyond my wildest expectations. Reynolds Tech grew faster than I could have imagined." Sarah's eyes widened. "Reynolds Tech? The Reynolds Tech? But that's a multi-billion-dollar company." Daniel nodded. "It was. Until 3 months ago, when my business partner orchestrated a hostile takeover while I was in the hospital with pneumonia. He falsified documents, turned the board against me, and left Emma and me with nothing. Our accounts were frozen pending litigation. Our house, our car, everything was in the company's name. But surely you have proof? Lawyers? My legal team is fighting, but these things take time. I couldn't access any funds, and we had nowhere to go. I didn't want Emma to know how bad things were, so I told her we were on an adventure. His voice broke. "I never imagined I'd find you again in the middle of the worst moment of my life." Sarah knelt beside them, placing a gentle hand on Emma's back. Sometimes life has a strange way of bringing people together exactly when they need each other most. That night, as Emma slept soundly in the small bedroom, Sarah and Daniel sat at her tiny kitchen table, 17 years of separation dissolving as they filled in the missing pieces of their lives. "I looked for you," Daniel admitted. "After I established the company. I hired private investigators, but the trail went cold. You'd changed your name professionally to your mother's maiden name for your culinary career." Sarah nodded. "I wanted to make it on my own merits, not be associated with my father's restaurant chain. All these years," Daniel said softly, "I've measured every relationship against what we had. Nothing ever came close." Sarah felt her heart racing. "There's never been anyone serious for me either. I told myself it was because I was focused on my career, but the truth is, no one ever made me feel the way you did." The following weeks brought dramatic changes. With Sarah's encouragement, Daniel contacted a former colleague who had remained loyal. Together, they gathered evidence of the fraud that had stripped him of his company. The media caught wind of the story. The billionaire tech CEO reduced to washing dishes to support his daughter, only to be reunited with his college sweetheart. The public outcry was immediate and fierce. Reynolds Tech stock plummeted as customers and investors withdrew their support. The board, facing mounting pressure, launched an internal investigation that quickly confirmed Daniel's claims. 3 months after walking into Sarah's bakery, Daniel was reinstated as CEO of Reynolds Tech. The first thing he did was establish a foundation to support homeless families and fund shelters across the country. Despite his restored fortune, Daniel continued to help at the bakery every morning before heading to his office. Emma, now enrolled in a nearby school, still spent afternoons at Sweet Beginnings, doing homework at her special corner table. "You don't have to keep coming here," Sarah told him one evening as they closed up shop together. "You have a company to run." Daniel took her hands in his. "This bakery is where I found my way back to you. Where Emma and I found hope when we had nothing. I'm never going to forget that." 6 months after their reunion, on a crisp autumn evening, Daniel proposed in the same bakery where fate had brought them together again. Emma, in on the secret, had helped decorate the space with twinkling lights and flowers. "17 years ago, I made you a promise I couldn't keep," Daniel said, down on one knee. "I'm asking for the chance to make you a new one, to love you and Emma for the rest of our lives, to never let anything separate us again." Sarah, tears streaming down her face, didn't hesitate. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times, yes. Their wedding was a simple affair in the garden behind the expanded Sweet Beginnings Bakery and Cafe, now a thriving business with multiple locations, each one employing people transitioning out of homelessness. As they exchanged vows, with Emma standing proudly between them, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From a desperate man washing dishes for $2 an hour to the restored CEO who had used his second chance to create opportunities for others, Daniel had shown her that sometimes, the most broken paths lead to the most beautiful destinations. "Life doesn't always give us what we want," she said in her vows, "but sometimes, if we're very lucky, it gives us exactly what we need, exactly when we need it most." Daniel squeezed her hand, his eyes shining with tears and promise. "Sometimes," he replied, "it gives us back what we thought was lost forever." As they sealed their vows with a kiss, Emma threw handfuls of flower petals into the air, laughing as they rained down around them. In that perfect moment, surrounded by friends and the community they'd built together, Sarah knew that some stories don't end when they seem to, they just take unexpected detours on the way to where they were always meant to be. And sometimes, the most beautiful new beginnings start with just $2 and a leap of faith. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing stories of hope, redemption, and the incredible power of human connection. Remember, sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as our greatest challenges. Until next time, keep believing in second chances.